Aliens plead for aid and Deathworlders respond with valor. Part 1. The message came from the dark spaces between stars. It traveled for 3 days through the cold emptiness of space before it reached Earth. When it arrived, it changed everything. Ambassador Kira stood before her communication device on a dying world. She was a Valor, a being made of soft light and gentle tissue. Her skin was almost see-through, and a soft blue glow came from inside her body. She was beautiful in the way a candle flame is beautiful, and like a candle flame, she could be destroyed by the smallest wind. Her hands shook as she pressed the broadcast button. Around her, the sky burned orange and red. The screams of her people filled the air. She had never made a call like this before. No Valor had. They were reaching out to the one species the Galactic Council had forbidden all contact with. They were calling the humans. "This is Ambassador Kira of Velos Prime," she said into the device. Her voice broke with fear. "We send this message to the planet called Earth. We send it to the beings called humans. We know your council classification. We know you are labeled as dangerous. We know your world is called a death world." She paused and wiped tears from her large, dark eyes. "We do not care anymore. We are dying. The Ravik swarm has come to our world. They are eating everything, our cities, our farms, our people. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We are farmers and artists and scientists. We do not know how to fight. We only know how to die." She took a shaking breath. "If there is any mercy in your kind, please help us. We are begging you, please." The message ended. Kira fell to her knees and wept. 3 days later on Earth, a man named Park Sun-ho sat in a gray room deep underground. He was a general in the United Defense Command. He was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face full of old scars. He had fought in 3 wars on distant colonies. He had buried more soldiers than he could count. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The holographic image of Ambassador Kira floated in front of him. Her words filled the room. When the message ended, nobody spoke for a long time. "Play it again," Sun-ho said quietly. His assistant played it again, and again. Each time, Sun-ho watched the fear in the alien woman's eyes. He watched the fires burning behind her. He listened to the screams. Finally, he turned to face his officers. Captain Lee Ji-won stood to his left. Ji-won was 35 years old, tall and thin, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He was known throughout the fleet as a tactical genius. He had led more rescue missions than anyone in the service. When a situation looked impossible, they called Ji-won. Lieutenant Choi Yuna stood to his right. She was 28, shorter than the others, with strong shoulders and hands that had broken bones and built shelters in equal measure. She was the best close combat specialist in the entire military. In training, she had once defeated 7 opponents at the same time. She never talked about it. Behind them stood Sergeant Baek Do-yeon. He was the oldest of the junior officers, 40 years old, with grease under his fingernails and a mind that could turn garbage into weapons. He was an engineer. He had once built a working radio from a broken coffee machine and 2 batteries. Nobody knew how he did it. He just smiled when they asked. "The Galactic Council has rules about us," Ji-won said slowly. "They classified Earth as a Category 7 death world. They said we are too dangerous to contact. They built a wall of laws to keep us away from their peaceful civilizations. And now they are asking us for help," Yuna added. There was something hard in her voice, something angry. Sun-ho nodded. "The Valor are not part of the Council's military alliance. They have no army, no defense fleet. They are farmers. They grow food for half the galaxy." He pointed at the frozen image of Kira. "Look at her. She has never held a weapon in her life. Neither has anyone on her planet." "The Ravik swarm," Do-yeon said. "I read about them, biomechanical predators. They move from planet to planet, eating everything organic. They use the material to build more of themselves. They never stop. They never negotiate." "How many?" Ji-won asked. "Based on the reports we intercepted, at least 50 million, probably more by now." The room went silent again. Yuna stepped forward. "General, what are our orders?" Sunho looked at her. Then he looked at each of his officers in turn. He saw no fear in their eyes. He saw only the same cold determination he felt in his own heart. "The Galactic Council told us to stay away," he said. "They said we were monsters. They said our planet was a nightmare and we were the nightmares that came from it." He stood up slowly, his old bones aching. "Maybe they were right. Maybe humans are dangerous. Maybe we are exactly what they feared." He walked to the window and looked out at nothing. But being dangerous does not mean being evil. A sword is dangerous. Fire is dangerous, but a sword can protect the innocent. Fire can warm the cold. It is not what we are that matters. It is what we choose to do with what we are. He turned back to his officers. "Those people out there, those Valori, they have never hurt anyone. They grow food and write poetry and raise their children in peace. And now something is eating them alive and they have no way to fight back. They called us because we are their last hope, because everyone else is too afraid. Because when you need someone to stand in front of a monster, you call a bigger monster." Sunho straightened his back and lifted his chin. "Prepare the carrier HFY for immediate departure. Full combat loadout. I want every volunteer we can get. No one is ordered on this mission. Everyone who goes, goes by choice." "Sir," Jiwon said, "the Council will not be happy. They might see this as an act of war." "Then let them be unhappy. Let them call it whatever they want. I do not answer to the Council. I answer to my conscience. And my conscience says that when innocent people cry for help, you help them. You do not ask permission. You do not wait for approval. You go." Within 6 hours, the HFY was ready. 400 soldiers had volunteered. 400 humans who knew they might not come back. 400 Deathworlders who chose to fight for strangers. As the ship lifted off from Earth's surface, Sunho stood on the bridge and watched his home planet grow smaller. "We are coming," he said quietly to the stars. "Hold on, we are coming." Somewhere across the galaxy, on a burning world, Ambassador Kira felt something strange in her heart. It was small and fragile, like a seed in frozen ground. It was hope. Aliens plead for aid and Deathworlders respond with valor. Part 2. The HFY dropped out of hyperspace like a stone falling into still water. The ship was massive, a beast of metal and fire, built for war on a world where war never ended. Inside its belly, 400 human soldiers waited in silence. General Park Sunho stood on the bridge and looked through the viewing window. What he saw made his heart go cold. Velos Prime had been a beautiful world once. The reports said it was covered in forests that glowed with soft light. The Valori had built their cities to match the land, with buildings that curved like flowers and streets that sparkled like rivers of crystal. It was supposed to be one of the most peaceful places in the galaxy. Now it was burning. Great black scars covered the planet's surface. Where cities once stood, there was only ash and smoke. The forests were gone, eaten down to bare rock. And moving across the land like a dark flood, there were the Ravik. Millions of them. Tens of millions. They looked like insects mixed with machines, all sharp legs and metal teeth and hungry, empty eyes. "My God," whispered Captain Lee Ji-won. He had seen many terrible things in his life, but nothing like this. Lieutenant Choi Yuna pressed her hand against the glass. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes burned with quiet rage. "Where are the survivors?" she asked. Sergeant Baek Do-yeon checked his instruments. "Southern continent. There is one city still standing. The shields are holding, but they will not last much longer. Maybe 2 days, maybe less." "That is where we go," Sunho said. "Prepare the landing teams." The shuttles launched from the HFY like seeds from a dying flower. Each one carried 50 soldiers in full combat armor. The armor was heavy and black, designed for the crushing gravity of Earth. On a lighter world like Velos Prime, it made the humans even stronger, even faster, even more terrifying. When the first shuttle touched down outside the last Valori city, Sunho was the first to step out. He found Ambassador Kira waiting for him. She was smaller than he expected. The top of her head barely reached his chest. Her body was thin and delicate, like it was made of glass and light. Her skin glowed with a soft blue color, but the glow was weak and flickering. She looked exhausted. She looked afraid. But she stood straight and lifted her chin to meet his eyes. "You came," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Sunho removed his helmet so she could see his face. He knew what he looked like to her. A giant, a monster from a nightmare world, a creature built for violence and death. He knelt down so their eyes were level. "We came," he said gently, "and we are not leaving until your people are safe." Around them, human soldiers poured out of the shuttles and began setting up defensive positions. The Valori refugees watched from behind the shield wall. Thousands of them, packed together like frightened animals. Their glows flickered with terror. They had never seen humans before. They had only heard stories. Stories about a species that lived on a world of poison and fire. Stories about beings with bones as dense as stone and muscles that could crush metal. Stories about predators in the shape of people. Now those predators were walking among them, carrying weapons bigger than Valori children, speaking in deep voices that rumbled like thunder. One young Valori started crying. Others backed away. Some fell to the ground, too scared to move. Lieutenant Yuna watched this happen. She watched the fear spread through the crowd like a disease. She watched children hide behind their parents and parents cover their eyes. Something broke inside her heart. "General," she said quietly, "permission to work with the civilians." Sunho looked at her. "Yuna, I need you on the front lines. You are our best fighter." "I know, sir, but look at them." She pointed at the crowd. "They are more afraid of us than they are of the Ravik. If they do not trust us, they will not follow our instructions. They will panic. They will run. They will die." Sunho was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You have 12 hours. Make them understand we are here to help. Then I need you killing monsters." "Yes, sir." Yuna walked toward the refugee camp. The Valori scattered before her like leaves before a storm. She moved slowly, keeping her hands visible, trying to make herself look small. It did not work very well. She was still taller and broader than any of them. She found a group of children huddled in a corner. They were crying softly, their lights dim with fear. When they saw her coming, they tried to run, but they were too tired and too weak. Yuna stopped several steps away. She sat down on the ground and crossed her legs. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper from her ration pack. The children watched with wide, frightened eyes as she began to fold the paper. Her thick fingers moved with surprising gentleness. Fold after fold, the paper changed shape. After a few minutes, she held up a small paper crane. She set it on the ground and pushed it toward the children. One brave child crept forward. It was tiny, barely as big as a human toddler, with huge dark eyes and trembling hands. It picked up the crane and looked at it like it was the most precious thing in the universe. "Pretty," the child said in broken galactic common. "You make." Yuna nodded and smiled. It was a small smile, careful not to show too many teeth. "I can teach you," she said slowly, using the simplest words she knew. The child hesitated. Then it walked closer and sat down next to her. The other children followed, one by one, until Yuna was surrounded by a small circle of glowing beings. She taught them to fold paper cranes. Her big hands moved slowly, showing each step again and again until they understood. The children laughed when their first attempts went wrong. They cheered when they finally got it right. One child reached out and touched Yuna's hand. It jumped back in surprise. "Warm," it said. "You are warm." Yuna looked at her own hand. To her, it felt normal. But to the Valori, who had never touched a human before, it must have felt like holding a small fire. "Yes," she said, Humans are warm, we carry fire inside us. The child tilted its head. Fire is dangerous. Fire can be dangerous, Yuna agreed. Fire can burn and destroy, but fire can also keep you safe. Fire can push away the darkness. Fire can warm you when you are cold. She looked at the child with gentle eyes. We are like fire. We can be dangerous, but we choose to use our fire to protect people, to protect you. The child thought about this for a long moment. Then it climbed into Yuna's lap and curled up against her chest. You are not scary, the child said sleepily. You are just big and warm. Yuna sat very still. She had broken bones and crushed enemies. She had walked through battlefields without flinching. But this tiny, trusting creature made her want to cry. Across the camp, other soldiers saw what she was doing. They began to approach the refugees slowly, carefully. They shared food. They fixed broken things. They lifted heavy objects that the Valori could not move. They spoke in soft voices and moved with gentle hands. Hour by hour, the fear began to fade. The Valori started to understand. These giants from the nightmare world were not here to hurt them. They were here to save them. Ambassador Kira found General Sunho watching the camp from a distance. Your people are strange, she said. You are built like predators, you move like hunters, but you touch our children like they are made of precious glass. Sunho nodded slowly. On Earth, we learned something important. Being strong does not mean being cruel. The strongest thing a person can do is choose to be gentle when they have the power to be violent. Why did you come? Kira asked. You do not know us, you owe us nothing. The Council has treated your kind with fear and suspicion for centuries. Why risk your lives for strangers? Sunho looked up at the smoke-filled sky. Because someone needed help, because we could give that help, because that is what makes us human. He turned to face her. On our world we have a saying, the measure of a person is not how they treat the powerful, it is how they treat the helpless. Kira felt tears running down her face. We called you monsters, we were so wrong. No, Sunho said quietly. You were right. We are monsters, but we are your monsters now, and monsters are very good at fighting other monsters. In the distance, the Ravok swarm gathered. They could smell the humans. They could sense the new threat. The real battle was about to begin. Aliens plead for aid and Deathworlders respond with valor. Part 3. The Ravok attacked at dawn. They came in a wave of black and silver, pouring over the hills like water through a broken dam. Each one was the size of a large dog, with 6 legs made of metal and bone, and mouths filled with teeth that could cut through steel. Their eyes glowed red in the dim morning light. They made no sound except for the clicking of their legs and the grinding of their jaws. There were thousands of them, tens of thousands. They came from every direction, surrounding the last Valori city like a tightening noose. Captain Lee Jiwon stood at the front line and watched them come. Behind him, 40 human soldiers waited in silence. They had spent the night preparing. They knew what was coming. Remember your training, Jiwon said calmly. His voice came through every soldier's helmet radio. These things are fast and they do not feel fear, but they are not smart. They do not think. They only eat. We are smarter. We are tougher. And we have something they will never understand. What is that, sir? Asked a young private. Jiwon smiled grimly. We have each other. We fight as one. We protect each other. No soldier gets left behind. No soldier dies alone. The swarm hit the defensive line like a crashing wave. The humans opened fire. The sound was deafening. Plasma rifles screamed. Explosive rounds boomed. The first row of Ravok exploded into pieces, but more came behind them, always more. A Ravok broke through the line and leaped at a soldier named Kim Tiwoo. Its claws caught his arm and tore through his armor. Blood sprayed across the ground. But Tiwoo did not fall. He grabbed the creature with his bare hand, slammed it against the ground, and crushed its head with his boot. I needed that arm, he growled. Then he picked up his rifle with his remaining hand and kept shooting. The Valori watched from behind the shield wall. They could not believe what they were seeing. The humans should have been overwhelmed. They were outnumbered by hundreds to one. The Ravik were faster and had sharper claws and did not need to rest. By every logical measure, the humans should have been dying. But they were not dying. When one soldier fell, two others dragged them to safety while still firing at the enemy. When ammunition ran low, soldiers shared their supplies without being asked. When a Ravik got too close, humans met it with fists and knives and bare hands. Sergeant Beak Doyan fought in the middle of the line. His left arm had been broken in the first minute of battle. A Ravik claw had shattered the bone just below his elbow. The pain was terrible. He could feel the broken pieces grinding together every time he moved. He did not stop fighting. With his right hand, he pulled a plasma grenade from his belt. The Ravik were clustering around a weak point in the line, trying to break through. If they succeeded, they would reach the civilian camp. Doyan ran toward them. "Sergeant, no," someone shouted behind him. He did not listen. He pushed through the swarm, ignoring the claws that tore at his armor. When he reached the center of the cluster, he activated the grenade and held it against his chest. The explosion was blinding. When the light faded, over 300 Ravik lay dead in a circle around him. The breakthrough had been stopped. Doyan lay in the center of the destruction. His armor was cracked and blackened. His body was not moving. Two soldiers ran to him and dragged him back behind the lines. A medic cut open his armor and checked for signs of life. "He is alive," the medic shouted. "Barely, but he is alive." Doyan opened one eye and grinned through blood-stained teeth. "Told you I would find a use for that grenade," he whispered. Then he passed out. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it was over, the ground in front of the defensive line was covered in Ravik bodies. Thousands of them. They were piled so high that new attackers had to climb over their dead to reach the humans. But the humans had held. G1 walked among his soldiers, checking on each one. 17 were wounded, 3 were critical, but everyone was alive. "That is impossible," whispered Ambassador Kira. She had watched the entire battle from the command center. "I saw them get hurt. I saw bones break and blood flow. They should have died. How are they still standing?" General Sunho stood beside her. He looked tired but not surprised. "On Earth, everything tries to kill you," he said. "The air can be poison. The water can be acid. The animals hunt in packs and never stop until they catch you. Even the plants have thorns and venom." He paused and watched his soldiers helping each other. "Humans evolved in that hell. Our bodies learned to keep fighting when other species would have given up. Our bones are dense. Our muscles can work even when damaged. Our minds can push past pain that would make others go mad." "But why do they not run?" Kira asked. "When they get hurt, why do they stay and fight?" "Because of the ones behind them." Sunho pointed at the refugee camp, where Valori children were watching with wide eyes. "We do not fight because we want to. We fight because if we do not, someone innocent will die. Every human soldier here made a choice. They chose to stand between your people and death. That choice means more to them than their own survival." Kira was silent for a long moment. "We have never seen anything like this," she finally said. "In the council records, humans are described as savage and brutal. They say you are barely civilized. They say you fight for pleasure and kill for sport." Sunho laughed softly. It was a sad sound. "Some humans are like that," he admitted. "Our history is full of violence and cruelty. We have done terrible things to each other and to other species. I will not pretend otherwise." He looked at her with serious eyes. "But that is not all we are. The same fire that makes us dangerous also makes us protective. We feel things deeply. Love, loyalty, the need to protect the weak. When we care about something, we will burn the whole universe down to keep it safe." "And you care about us?" Kira asked. "You care about the Valori?" "I did not know your people existed until a week ago," Sunho said honestly. I had never seen a Valori face or heard a Valori voice, but I heard you crying for help. I saw your children hiding in fear, and that was enough." He put a heavy hand on her shoulder, gentle despite its weight. "You are not strangers to us anymore. You are under our protection, and we do not abandon the people we protect." That night the Valori medics worked alongside human doctors to treat the wounded. It was difficult. Human bodies were so different from Valori bodies. Their blood was thick and red instead of thin and blue. Their organs were in strange places. Their skin was tough like leather. But the Valori doctors learned quickly. They were scientists at heart, curious about everything. Soon they were asking questions about human biology that made the human doctors laugh. "You really breathe oxygen and nitrogen mixed together?" one Valori asked with amazement. "That is a poison combination. How do you survive?" "Practice," the human doctor replied with a grin. In the refugee camp, Lieutenant Una sat with the children again. She had spent the battle waiting, watching, ready to fight if the line broke. It had not broken, but she had heard the screams and explosions. She had smelled the blood and burning metal. Now she was teaching the children a new paper shape, a dog this time. "What is a dog?" one child asked. Una smiled. "It is an animal from our world. It has 4 legs and a tail and sharp teeth." "Is it dangerous?" "It can be. Dogs are predators. They hunt and bite and fight." She finished folding the paper and held up the little shape. "But humans made friends with dogs a long, long time ago. We took a predator and turned it into a protector. Now dogs guard our homes and play with our children and love us with all their hearts." The child took the paper dog and looked at it carefully. "Humans are like dogs," the child said slowly. "Dangerous but friendly, predators who protect." Una felt something warm spread through her chest. "Yes," she said, "that is exactly right." Above them the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there the Ravik swarm was regrouping. The battle was not over. It had barely begun. But for one night there was peace. For one night, Deathworlders and light beings rested together, bound by something stronger than fear. Trust. Aliens plead for aid and Deathworlders respond with valor. Part 4. The news came on the 3rd day, and it was bad. General Park Sun-ho stood on the bridge of the HFY and stared at the damage reports. The main cannons were destroyed. A Ravik strike team had somehow reached the ship in orbit and torn through the weapon systems before they could be stopped. The ship could still fly, but it could no longer rain fire down on the enemy. Their greatest advantage was gone. "It gets worse," Captain G1 said grimly. He pointed at the tactical display. "The Ravik have been gathering. Every swarm on the planet is moving toward one location." The map showed it clearly. Millions of red dots flowing together like rivers joining the sea. They were all heading toward the same place. Lumina, the city of last light, the last Valori city still standing. "How many?" Sun-ho asked. "Hard to say. At least 3 million, maybe more." 3 million Ravik against less than 300 human soldiers. The math was simple. The math was hopeless. Lieutenant Una spoke from the corner of the room. "The city shields." "Failing," G1 answered. "They were never meant for this kind of attack. The Ravik have been throwing themselves at the shields day and night. The generators are overheating. They will collapse within 6 hours." 6 hours. After that, the Ravik would pour into Lumina like floodwater through a broken wall. 12 million Valori civilians would be defenseless. Sun-ho closed his eyes. He had faced impossible situations before. He had made hard choices. He had sent good people to die because there was no other way. But this was different. This was not just soldiers. This was an entire people, artists and farmers and children who had never hurt anyone. He opened his eyes and straightened his back. "Get me every soldier who can still hold a weapon. Everyone. I do not care if they are wounded. If they can fight, I need them on the line." "Sir," G1 said carefully, We have 287 combat-ready personnel, against 3 million. I can count, Captain. The odds are. I know what the odds are. Sunho's voice was hard as stone. I know this is probably the last battle we will ever fight. I know most of us will not survive. He looked at his officers one by one. But those people in that city are counting on us. They called for help and we answered. We promised them we would keep them safe. I will not break that promise. Even if it kills us all, G1 asked quietly. Especially if it kills us all. Sunho put his hand on G1's shoulder. Do you remember what we told them? We told them we were their monsters now. Monsters do not run. Monsters do not surrender. Monsters fight until there is nothing left to fight with. G1 was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I will gather the troops. The soldiers assembled in the main hall of Lumina's central temple. It was a beautiful building, made of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. The Valori had built it 1,000 years ago as a place of peace and meditation. Now it was a fortress. Sunho stood before his soldiers and looked at their faces. They were young and old, men and women from every corner of Earth. They were scientists and engineers and farmers who had chosen to become soldiers. They had families waiting for them back home, lives they might never return to. None of them looked afraid. I will not lie to you, Sunho said. The situation is bad. We are outnumbered 10,000 to 1. Our orbital support is gone. No reinforcements are coming. The Council has refused to send help. He paused and let the words sink in. By every logical measure, we are going to die today. Silence. But I have learned something in my years of service. Logical measures do not account for human beings. They do not account for what we are willing to do for the people we care about. They do not account for spite, for stubbornness, for the pure burning refusal to give up. He stepped forward. Out there behind these walls there are 12 million innocent people. They have no weapons. They have no training. They have nothing but us. We are the only thing standing between them and annihilation. Lieutenant Yuna stepped out of the crowd. Her armor was dented and scarred from the previous battles. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her voice was strong. Sir, the Valori children taught me a word yesterday, Solhari. It means those who carry the light. She looked at her fellow soldiers. They think that is what we are. They think we carry light inside us, and that is why we came to save them. She drew her combat knife and held it up. I would rather die as a Solhari than live knowing I abandoned them. Who stands with me? For a moment, nothing happened. Then another soldier stood, and another, and another. One by one, every soldier in the room rose to their feet. They did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply stood in silence, their eyes fixed on their lieutenant. G1 cracked his neck and checked his rifle. Well, I was getting bored of living anyway. Let us go kill some bugs. Even Sergeant Doyun was there, his arm wrapped in bandages, his face pale from blood loss. He should have been in the medical bay. Instead, he was on his feet, holding a bag of explosive charges. You should be resting, Yuna told him. I will rest when I am dead, he replied. Until then, I have work to do. I found something interesting in the old city systems. The irrigation network runs under the whole battlefield. If I can get the right chemicals into the pipes, I can spray the Ravik with something that will eat through their armor. Can you do it from here? No, I have to get to the control station. It is outside the walls. That is suicide. Doyun grinned. I already died once this week. What is one more time? The Ravik arrived at sunset. They came in a tide of black and silver, filling the horizon from edge to edge. The ground shook with their movement. The air filled with the clicking of millions of legs. The humans waited behind their barricades, weapons ready, hearts steady. Sunho stood at the front, right in the center of the line, an old general with a young soldier's rifle. Remember why we are here, he said into the radio. Remember who we are fighting for. Give them everything. Give them your last breath if you have to, but do not let them through." The Ravik charged. The humans opened fire. The Battle of Lumina had begun. The first hour was chaos. Ravik poured against the barricades in endless waves. Humans cut them down by the hundreds, but more always came. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Do-Yun led a small team through the back passages toward the irrigation control station. They moved fast, killing Ravik scouts along the way. His broken arm screamed with pain at every step. He ignored it. The control station was a small building at the edge of the city. By the time they reached it, 2 of his team were dead and the others were wounded. But they got the door open. Do-Yun worked fast. His good hand flew across the controls, rerouting chemicals, adjusting pressure levels, calculating spray patterns. Outside, he could hear the battle raging. He could hear the screams of dying soldiers. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, come on." The system activated. Across the battlefield, hidden sprinklers burst to life. A fine mist sprayed over the charging Ravik. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Ravik began to dissolve. The chemical compound ate through their biomechanical armor like acid through paper. Thousands of them collapsed in seconds, their legs melting, their bodies falling apart. It bought the humans 2 more hours. But it was not enough. By hour 17, the shield generators failed completely. The protective barrier around the city flickered and died, leaving nothing between the Ravik and the civilians. Sunho ordered all non-combatants to the central temple. It was the most defensible position, with thick walls and narrow entrances. Then he walked to the front line, picked up a fallen soldier's rifle, and joined the fight. "Anyone who wants to live forever," he shouted over the noise of battle, "stay behind me." Nobody stayed behind. They fought in the ruins of the outer city. They fought in the streets and the gardens and the ancient libraries. They fought with guns and knives and bare hands. They fought until they had nothing left. And still they fought. In the temple, the Valori huddled together and listened to the sounds of war. Ambassador Kira stood at the window, watching the flashes of light in the darkness. "They are dying for us," she whispered. "They are dying and they will not stop." A Valori elder stood beside her. His light was dim with age, but his voice was steady. "I have lived for 300 years, he said. "I have seen many things, but I have never seen anything like this." He watched as a human soldier, legs torn and bleeding, dragged herself toward a group of Ravik and detonated an explosive at point-blank range. They do not fight like people who expect to survive. They fight like people who have already accepted death but refuse to let it take them until their work is done. Kira felt tears running down her face. "How do we ever repay this?" she asked. "We live," the elder answered. "We survive, and we never ever forget what they did for us." Outside, the battle continued. The night was long and filled with fire. But the humans held. They held. Aliens plead for aid and Deathworlders respond with valor. Part 5. When the sun rose over Lumina, it revealed a world transformed. The battlefield stretched for miles in every direction, covered in the broken bodies of Ravik. They lay in piles so high that the ground could not be seen beneath them. Millions of them, motionless and silent. The swarm was broken. Not destroyed completely. Scattered groups still wandered the wastelands, confused and directionless. But the great hive mind that had driven them was shattered. The Ravik were no longer an army. They were just insects, lost and leaderless. The humans had won. But victory had cost them dearly. General Park Sunho stood among the ruins and counted his dead. 63 soldiers had fallen during the 19 hours of battle. 63 men and women who would never go home. 63 families who would receive the worst news of their lives. He knew all their names. He would remember all their names until the day he died. The survivors gathered in the temple courtyard as medics rushed between them. Most were wounded. Some could barely stand, but they were alive. Captain Lee Ji-won lay on a stretcher, his chest wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. He had led the final charge against the Ravik's central nodes, the three creatures that served as the hive mind's core. Destroying them had broken the swarm's coordination and turned the battle. It had nearly killed him. Lieutenant Choi Yuna knelt beside him, holding his hand. Her armor was cracked and covered in Ravik blood. She had fought for 19 hours straight without rest. "You stupid man," she said quietly. "You were supposed to wait for backup." Ji-won smiled weakly. "There was no time. If I waited, they would have reached the temple." "You almost died." "Almost is not dead." He coughed and winced in pain. "Besides, the Valori medics are good. They figured out human biology faster than I expected." Two Valori doctors hovered nearby, checking Ji-won's vital signs with unfamiliar instruments. They had never treated a human before this week. Now they had learned more about human medicine than any Valori in history. "His heart rate is too fast," one of them said nervously. "That is normal for humans under stress," Yuna explained. "Their hearts beat faster than ours. They are designed for intense activity." "Designed for madness, you mean," the doctor muttered, but there was respect in his voice. Sergeant Baek Do-yeon sat against a wall, his broken arm now properly bandaged and set in a cast. He had been found unconscious in the irrigation control station, surrounded by dead Ravik. His chemical spray had killed over 100,000 of them. It had saved countless lives. He woke up asking for a cup of coffee. Ambassador Kira walked through the courtyard, looking at the humans with something like wonder. She stopped in front of General Sunho and bowed deeply. "I do not have words," she said. "In all our languages, in all our poetry, there are no words for what you have done." Sunho shook his head. "We just did what needed to be done." "No," Kira's voice was firm. "Do not diminish this. You came from the other side of the galaxy to save people you had never met. You fought impossible odds. You died for strangers. That is not just doing what needed to be done. That is something holy." Sunho was quiet for a long moment. "On Earth," he finally said, "we have a saying, no good deed goes unpunished." He looked at the rising sun. "The Galactic Council will not be happy about this. We violated their laws. We entered their space without permission. We made contact with a protected species. There will be consequences." "Let them try," Kira said fiercely. "Let them come to Velos Prime and tell us that our saviors are criminals. Let them explain to 12 million survivors that the beings who died for them deserve punishment. I would like to see them try." 1 week later, Ambassador Kira stood before the Galactic Council. The council chamber was an enormous room on a space station at the center of the galaxy. Representatives from 12 species sat in a circle, watching and listening. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had never been challenged. Today they looked uncertain. "Ambassador Kira," said the High Speaker, a tall being with silver skin and cold eyes. "You called this emergency session. Speak your piece." Kira stepped forward. She was small compared to most council members. Her light was soft and gentle. She did not look like a threat. But her words were powerful. 3 weeks ago, the Ravik swarm attacked my world. They killed millions of my people. They destroyed our cities and farms. We called for help from the council. We begged you to send ships, to send soldiers, to send anything." She paused and looked at each council member in turn. "You refused. You told us that the Ravik were too dangerous. You told us that sending help would cost too many lives. You told us to accept our fate with dignity." Murmurs ran through the chamber. But someone else answered our call. Someone the council had told us to fear. Someone labeled as dangerous, unpredictable savage. Kira's voice grew stronger. "The humans came. They came without asking for payment. They came without demanding anything in return. They came because we needed help and they could give it. She turned to face the High Speaker directly. 287 human soldiers fought 3 million Ravik for 19 hours. 63 of them died. They died for people they had never met, from a species that had been taught to hate them. And they won. They broke the swarm and saved 12 million lives. Ambassador, the High Speaker interrupted, the humans violated dozens of council laws. They entered restricted space. They made contact with protected species. They engaged in unauthorized military action. Surely you are not suggesting we overlook these crimes. Crimes? Kira laughed. It was not a happy sound. You call saving lives a crime. You call protecting the innocent a crime. Then yes, the humans are criminals, and I would rather be defended by criminals than abandoned by the law-abiding. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small object. It was a paper crane, folded by human hands, given to a Valori child. This is what the humans gave us, she said, holding it up for everyone to see. Not just protection, not just survival, hope, trust. The knowledge that somewhere in this cold universe there are beings who will fight for strangers. She placed the crane on the council table. We called them Deathworlders. We called them monsters. We were wrong. They are not creatures of death. They are creatures who have mastered death and chosen to use that mastery to protect life. The chamber was silent. General Sunho stepped forward. He was wearing his full dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. He walked with a cane now. The battle had taken its toll even on his tough body. The Council can punish us if you want, he said. You can declare war on Earth. You can try to make us pay for what we did. Maybe you would even win. He smiled grimly. But before you decide, ask yourselves this question. The next time the darkness comes, who will you call? The species that follow your rules and watch innocent people die, or the species that break your rules and fight for what is right? He looked around the chamber. Humanity is not asking to join your council. We do not want your laws or your politics or your power struggles. We just want you to remember one thing. When you are desperate, when your children are dying, when all hope is gone, you can call us. We will answer. We will always answer. The council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they did not punish the humans. They could not. Public opinion across the galaxy had shifted. The story of Lumina had spread everywhere. Species that had feared humans now looked at them with different eyes. Not as monsters, as guardians. On Velos Prime, the Valori built a monument at the heart of Lumina. It was made of crystal that glowed with soft light, shaped like a human soldier standing tall with a rifle in one hand and a child's hand in the other. The inscription read, "They came from a world that tried to kill them every day, and still they chose to die for strangers. We will never forget." Lieutenant Yuna stood before the monument on the day it was unveiled. Around her, Valori and humans stood side by side. The children she had taught to fold paper cranes held flowers made of light. One child tugged at her hand. "Miss Yuna," the child said, "will you come back to visit us?" Yuna knelt down and smiled. "Yes, I promise. Whenever you need us, we will come." "Why?" She thought about the question for a long moment. "Because that is what family does, and you are our family now." The child hugged her tightly. On Earth, the broadcast of the monument ceremony was watched by billions. Some cried, some cheered. All of them felt something deep inside, something that had always been there but was now finally awake. Pride, purpose, the knowledge that being human meant something. Not because humans were the strongest or the smartest or the most powerful, but because when the universe cried out in pain, humans were the ones who answered. And they always would be. In the cold space between stars, on a dozen different worlds, species who had never thought about Earth before began to wonder. They began to hope. They began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were not alone in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Deathworlders watched over them. Monsters who chose to be heroes. Humans. The story spread across the galaxy like fire spreading through dry grass. It was told in different languages in different ways, but the core was always the same. When the darkness comes, do not despair. Call the humans. Call the Solhari. They will answer. They will always answer. And that, more than anything else, is what makes them human.